smash that like button, subscribe before this gets darker, and drop a comment if you're ready. Because once you step inside this story, there's no walking back out. The sirens were already screaming when the body was found. It was just before dawn, that quiet hour when even a prison seems to hold its breath. Fog clung to the razor wire like damp gauze, and the floodlights cast long, crooked shadows across the exercise yard. Guards were still making the morning rounds when someone noticed the shape near the far fence. Too still, too wrong to be a sleeping inmate. By the time the alarm went out, the yard was locked down. The man on the concrete was identified as Marcus Hale, inmate number 447921, serving 12 years for armed robbery. He was housed in what officials called a medium security facility. The word medium sounded harmless on paper. Balanced, controlled, safe. The scene in front of them said otherwise. Hale's body showed no obvious signs of a struggle. No blood pooling beneath him. No weapon in sight. Just his prison-issued jacket folded neatly under his head, as if someone had laid him down carefully after he died. His face was calm, almost peaceful, except for one detail that made the guards exchange uneasy looks. His inmate ID card was missing. Inside prisons, that mattered more than most people realized. Within minutes, the prison went into full lockdown. Doors slammed shut. Inmates were ordered to the floor. Radios crackled with clipped voices and half-finished sentences. This wasn't just a death, it was a message. And messages inside prison walls rarely stayed contained. Detective Alan Mercer arrived less than an hour later, escorted through 3 separate gates that slammed shut behind him with metallic finality. Mercer had spent 20 years investigating crimes most people never saw. He'd worked murders in city alleys, suburban homes, abandoned warehouses. But prison cases were different. The walls changed everything. The rules bent. The truth hid in plain sight. As Mercer stepped into the yard, he noticed something immediately. The guards were tense in a way that went beyond procedure. This wasn't panic. It was fear, the kind that came from knowing the system had failed, and no one knew how badly. "What level is this yard?" Mercer asked. "Medium," the warden replied. "Supposed to be." Mercer looked around. The fencing was tall but aging. Cameras watched from high poles, but blind spots were obvious if you knew where to look. Inmates here weren't considered the worst of the worst. They weren't lifers with nothing to lose. They were men expected to follow rules, work jobs, maybe even rehabilitate. Yet one of them was dead, placed like a warning. Marcus Hale hadn't been a troublemaker, according to his file. No major write-ups. No known gang affiliations. He worked in the prison laundry, kept his head down, counted the days. The kind of inmate who survived by staying invisible. So why was he lying in the yard before sunrise? As Mercer walked the perimeter, he noticed scuff marks near the fence. Light. Almost erased by the morning dew. Someone had stood there recently. Watched. Waited. Not rushed. Not careless. Who had yard access overnight? Mercer asked. The answer came hesitantly. Minimum and medium inmates assigned to clean up crews. About 20 men. 20 potential witnesses. Or suspects. Or both. Inside the prison, word spread faster than the guards could control it. Inmates whispered through vents and under doors. A man was dead. Not stabbed. Not beaten. And that meant something else was at play. In prison culture, violence followed patterns. When those patterns broke, it usually meant someone powerful was sending a signal. Mercer met with the medical examiner inside a small, fluorescent-lit room near the infirmary. The preliminary cause of death was cardiac arrest, but Mercer wasn't convinced. Healthy men didn't just drop dead at 34 without a reason. No signs of forced trauma, the examiner said carefully. But there's something else. She slid a small evidence bag across the table. Inside was a thin strip of fabric, cut cleanly, deliberately, from a prison uniform. Found clenched in his hand, she continued, like he grabbed it as he went down. Mercer felt a tightening in his chest. Prison uniforms were standardized, but cuts like this weren't random. They were markers. Tags. Back in the administration wing, Mercer requested security footage. What he got was a headache. The cameras covering the yard had glitched for exactly 12 minutes between 4:18 and 4:30 a.m. 12 minutes was an eternity inside a prison. Maintenance issue, the tech said quickly. Too quickly. Mercer didn't respond. He'd heard that line before. Cameras didn't fail on their own. Not without help. As the day dragged on, interviews began. Inmates sat across from Mercer behind scratched plexiglass, eyes calculating every word. Most claimed they'd been asleep. A few admitted to being outside but insisted they saw nothing. Then there was Daniel Cross. Cross was serving 7 years for aggravated assault and housed in the same unit as Hale. Unlike Hale, Cross had a reputation. Not violent in obvious ways, but influential. He talked. He listened. He knew things. When Mercer asked about Hale, Cross leaned back and smiled faintly. Marcus wasn't built for this place, Cross said. Didn't understand the levels. What levels? Mercer asked. Cross's smile faded just a little. You got minimum, medium, maximum, supermax. But those are just labels for the public. Inside, there are other levels. Ones you don't see. Mercer pressed him, but Cross clammed up. Asked for a lawyer. The interview ended with more questions than answers. By late afternoon, Mercer realized something unsettling. This wasn't just a murder investigation. It was a lesson, one written in silence and fear. That evening, Mercer reviewed Hale's phone records and mail logs. One letter stood out. No return address. No name. Just a single sentence written in block letters. You don't belong where you think you do. Mercer stared at the words, feeling the weight of them settle in. Hale had been warned. About what? Or who? The next morning, the warden called an emergency meeting. Tensions were rising. Inmates were refusing meals. Guards reported hostile stares, coded hand signals, sudden alliances forming across cell blocks that normally didn't interact. Something was shifting inside the prison. And then the call came in. Another inmate had collapsed, this time in a different wing. Not dead. Not yet. Mercer rushed to the infirmary, heart pounding. The man on the gurney was gasping for breath, eyes wide with terror. As doctors worked, he grabbed Mercer's sleeve with surprising strength. It's not the guards, the inmate whispered. It's not gangs like you think. What is it? Mercer demanded. The inmate swallowed hard. They're moving people, changing levels. And if you don't fit where they put you, you disappear. Before Mercer could ask another question, the inmate lost consciousness. Security footage from that wing showed no glitches. No fights. No obvious suspects. Just a man walking down the hall one moment and collapsing the next. By now, Mercer understood the real danger. Prison levels weren't just about walls and locks. They were about control. About who had power, who was protected, and who was expendable. Someone inside this system was rewriting those rules and killing to enforce them. Late that night, Mercer was escorted to a restricted records room. What he found there made his blood run cold. A sealed file labeled Reclassification Protocol, internal use only. Inside were transfer logs, handwritten notes, and unauthorized level changes, dozens of them. Inmates quietly moved between security levels without hearings, without oversight. Men placed in environments designed to break them. And Marcus Hale's name was right there on the list. He hadn't died by accident. He'd been placed. As Mercer flipped the page, his phone buzzed with an urgent message from a guard stationed in the oldest part of the facility. Detective, you need to see this. We opened a locked storage area under cell block D. Mercer didn't hesitate. He followed the guard down a narrow corridor rarely used anymore, the air thick with dust and neglect. The door creaked open, revealing a small concrete room lit by a single flickering bulb. Inside were personal items, dozens of them, prison IDs, uniform strips, letters, belongings from inmates who were still officially alive. And taped to the wall was a handwritten note. Levels exist for a reason. But when Mercer noticed the most recent ID pinned at the center of the wall, his stomach dropped. It belonged to a man scheduled for release in less than 72 hours. And at that moment, no one knew where he was. When Detective Alan Mercer stepped back into the prison infirmary, the air wasn't just tense. It felt like a pressure chamber about to burst. An inmate, Ethan Rowe, who was just days away from release, had vanished. Officially, he was still in cell block C, medium security. In reality, his cell was spotless. The bed was made, the locker was empty. There was no transfer order, no disciplinary action, and not a single frame of camera footage showing him leave. It was as if the prison itself had just swallowed him whole. Mercer stood in the empty cell, the concrete walls feeling colder than usual. He'd seen his share of staged escapes and cover-ups, but never one this perfect. Someone had managed to erase Ethan Rowe from existence without setting off a single alarm. How long has he been missing? Mercer asked the lieutenant standing beside him. The man hesitated. That's the problem, detective. We don't know. That one sentence sent a chill down Mercer's spine. Prisons live and die by the count. Morning count, evening count, Midnight count. Inmates don't just disappear between them, not unless someone is gaming the system from the inside. Mercer demanded an immediate lockdown of the affected wings. The warden pushed back, worried about media scrutiny and lawsuits. But Mercer was firm. "You've already got one dead inmate and one missing," he said, his voice low. "If this continues, you won't be the one deciding what gets exposed." The lockdown was ordered within the hour. Behind the sealed doors, the prison's fragile peace shattered. Guards patrolled in pairs, their radios crackling with nervous energy. Inmates yelled questions that no one would answer. The prison's hidden power structure was stirring, and it didn't like being disturbed. Mercer retreated to the administration floor, spreading out files across a long conference table. Classification records, transfer logs, incident reports. As he sifted through the mountain of paperwork, a pattern began to emerge. It wasn't chaos, it was a deliberate design. Over the past 18 months, dozens of inmates had been quietly reclassified. Some were moved to higher security units for no apparent reason. Others were downgraded into general population yards where they clearly didn't belong. The pattern wasn't random. It was tied to behavior, to influence, and most of all, to silence. Inmates who complained were ignored. Inmates who asked too many questions found themselves in isolation. And inmates who knew how the system really worked, they were moved. "This isn't negligence," Mercer muttered to himself. "It's governance." He traced the approval signatures up the chain of command until he hit a brick wall. Deputy Director Malcolm Reeve, the head of inmate classification for the entire state. Reeve was a ghost, an untouchable figure. 25 years in corrections, decorated, and media savvy. The press called him a reformer. He was the man who decided who went where and why. Mercer's request for an interview was flatly denied. Instead, he got an informal warning through a back channel in Sacramento. "You're wading into policy territory, detective," a voice on the phone advised. "This case needs to stay local." Mercer hung up. He went back to the infirmary to see the inmate who had collapsed the night before, Luis Moreno. Moreno was awake now, but he looked small and frail, his eyes darting around the room as if he expected someone to step out of the shadows. As soon as Mercer sat down, Moreno whispered, "They moved me." "Moved you where?" Mercer asked. Moreno shook his head. "Not on paper. In reality. One night, I was in medium security. The next, they threw me in a max security cell. No warning, no reason." "Who did?" Mercer pressed. Moreno swallowed hard. "It's not just the guards. It's other inmates. Some of them work for the system. They enforce it." "Enforce what?" Moreno's hands were trembling. "The levels. If you're quiet, you stay where you are. If you talk, they move you to a place where you can't survive." It all clicked into place. This was what happened to the first inmate, Hale, and why Roe had vanished. "Why didn't you disappear?" Mercer asked. Moreno let out a dry, humorless laugh. "Because I collapsed before they could finish the job." Mercer left the infirmary with a terrifying certainty. This prison wasn't just managing its population. It was actively reshaping it, using fear as a currency to break people down. That night, a message was slipped under his hotel room door. No envelope, no signature. Just 4 words. "Check Block D, midnight." Alone. Every instinct told him it was a trap, but he couldn't ignore it. He memorized the note and burned it in the sink. At midnight, he entered Block D, telling the staff he was inspecting old infrastructure. The wing was decommissioned, filled with forgotten cells and dusty storage rooms. A guard named Sheila Warren escorted him part of the way, then stopped. "I'm not supposed to go past here," she said quietly. Mercer looked at her. She was nervous, but she wasn't his enemy. "You know something's wrong here, don't you?" he said. Warren hesitated, then gave a small nod. "People think prison levels are about safety. They're not. They're about control. And someone is abusing that control." "Why tell me?" "Because I found something," she said, her voice dropping. "And I don't want it on my conscience." She unlocked a narrow, unmarked door and stepped aside. Behind it was a hidden corridor, not on any blueprint. It led down to a row of reinforced cells buried deep beneath Block D. No windows, no cameras, no official record. An unofficial, off-the-book supermax. And in one of those cells sat Ethan Rowe. He was alive, but barely. His eyes were sunken, his hands shook uncontrollably. "They told me I was being moved for my own safety," Rowe rasped. "Then they locked me down here." "Who?" Mercer asked. Rowe just laughed weakly. "Does it matter? They all answer to the same system. Mercer grabbed his radio to call for medical backup, but before he could speak, alarms blared through the wing. Warren swore under her breath. They know. Footsteps pounded down the corridor. Guards. Too many of them, moving too fast. This wasn't supposed to happen, she said, her voice filled with panic. In that moment, Mercer knew. The note wasn't a tip-off. It was bait. Armed guards flooded the corridor, their weapons raised. The officer in the lead stepped forward, his face a mask of cold authority. "Detective Mercer," he said calmly. "You're in a restricted area." Mercer raised his hand slowly. "You're hiding inmates off the books." The officer's jaw tightened. "We're maintaining order." From his cell, Rose started shouting. "They're killing people in here." A sharp crack echoed through the narrow space. Rose slumped against the wall, unconscious, a dark stain spreading across his shoulder. Not dead, but silenced. Everything exploded. Warren screamed. Mercer lunged forward, but was immediately restrained by the guards. As they dragged him away, he locked eyes with the lead officer. "This won't stay buried," Mercer snarled. The officer leaned in close, his voice a chilling whisper. "Everything stays buried in here." Mercer was escorted out of the prison that night, not arrested, but expelled. His access was revoked, his investigation officially suspended. By morning, the official story was written. Hale's death was from natural causes. Rose's disappearance was a clerical error. The hidden cells under Block D were erased from the records. The system had closed ranks. But Mercer wasn't done. He contacted Rachel Kim, an investigative journalist he trusted, someone who knew how to untangle webs of power and money. When he showed her the evidence, her expression hardened. "This isn't just one prison," she said, pointing to the documents. "These reclassification protocols exist statewide." Together, they traced the threads back to Malcolm Reeve. His influence was behind every illegal transfer, every falsified report. But just as they were about to go public, Rachel went silent. Her phone went straight to voicemail. Her apartment was empty. Her laptop and notes were gone. There was no sign of a struggle, just one thing left on her kitchen table, a small, cleanly cut strip of prison uniform fabric. Pinned beneath it was a handwritten note. "Levels exist everywhere." For the first time, Mercer understood the true scale of what he was fighting. This was never about one corrupt prison. It was about an entire system designed to decide who deserved to survive and who didn't. And someone was willing to kill to keep that system a secret. The fight was no longer just inside prison walls. It was everywhere. And he was standing right in the middle. What's the highest level a person can reach? Is it having immense wealth, like being on the Forbes list? Or maybe it's holding a position of great power, making decisions that affect millions? Perhaps it's achieving intellectual brilliance, like a Nobel Prize winner who unravels the secrets of the universe. For a long time, I thought these were the pinnacles of human achievement. We're often taught to look up to these figures, to see their success as the ultimate goal. Wealth, power, knowledge, these are the metrics our society uses to measure greatness. But what if there's a level beyond all that? What if the true peak isn't something you can see, count, or list on a resume? I want you to think about someone you truly admire. Not just someone you think is successful, but someone whose way of being deeply resonates with you. It could be a historical figure, a mentor, or even a family member. What is it about them that stands out? Is it just their accomplishments? Or is it something deeper? For me, when I really think about it, the people I admire most possess qualities that aren't tied to external success. They have a certain inner state, a way of moving through the world that feels different. It's a state of being that's calm, centered, and profoundly peaceful. Imagine a person who has achieved everything the world deems important. They have the money, the influence, the recognition. But inside, they are constantly anxious, worried about losing what they have, always comparing themselves to others, and never truly satisfied. Are they really at the highest level? Now, imagine another person. They might live a simple life, without fame or fortune, but they possess an unshakable inner peace. They are free from the turmoil of envy, resentment, and fear. They find joy in simple things, treat everyone with kindness, and face life's challenges with a steady, untroubled heart. Which of these two people has reached a higher state of being? This brings us to what I believe is the true highest level, inner freedom. It's not about what you have, it's about what you are. The highest level isn't about controlling the world outside of you, but about mastering the world inside of you. It's the ability to remain undisturbed by external events, to be the calm center of your own storm. This isn't about being passive or indifferent. It's about having such a strong inner foundation that nothing can shake you. This is the state the ancient Stoics called apatheia, a state of tranquility free from emotional disturbance. It's what Buddhists call nirvana, the extinguishing of the fires of greed, hatred, and delusion. So, how do we get there? It's not a destination you arrive at overnight. It's a continuous practice, a journey of self-cultivation. The first step is awareness. You have to start paying attention to your own inner world. What are the thoughts and emotions that run your life? Most of us are on autopilot, constantly reacting to triggers without even realizing it. We get angry when someone cuts us off in traffic. We feel envious when we see a friend's vacation photos on social media. We feel anxious about a future that hasn't even happened. These reactions feel automatic, but they are not. They are habits of the mind. And like any habit, they can be changed. The practice begins with observation. When a strong emotion arises, instead of immediately identifying with it and acting on it, just watch it. Observe it like you would observe clouds passing in the sky. Where do you feel it in your body? What thoughts are attached to it? This simple act of non-judgmental observation creates a space between the trigger and your response. In that space lies your freedom. You realize that you are not your anger. You are the one who is aware of the anger. You are not your anxiety. You are the one who is witnessing the anxiety. This is a profound shift in identity. Let's take a practical example. Say you receive some criticism at work. The old you might immediately get defensive, feel hurt, and spend the rest of the day replaying the conversation in your head. The new you, the one practicing inner freedom, takes a breath. You feel the sting of the criticism, the heat rising in your chest. You acknowledge the feeling. Ah, this is defensiveness. This is hurt. You observe the thoughts. They don't appreciate me. They're wrong. But you don't let these thoughts and feelings take over. You see them for what they are, temporary mental events. You can then choose your response. Maybe you can see a grain of truth in the criticism. Maybe you can respond calmly and professionally, asking for clarification. You are no longer a puppet of your emotions. You are the one pulling the strings. This practice of observation is at the heart of mindfulness and meditation. It's about training your attention to stay in the present moment. Our minds are constantly wandering, lost in regrets about the past or worries about the future. This mental time travel is the source of so much of our suffering. When you bring your attention back to the here and now, to the sensation of your breath, to the sounds around you, to the feeling of your feet on the ground, you anchor yourself in reality. And in the present moment, untainted by past and future, you often find that everything is actually okay. The problems we agonize over are usually just thoughts in our heads. Another crucial aspect of reaching this highest level is simplifying your life. The world constantly tells us we need more. A better car, a bigger house, the latest phone. Each new desire becomes a new source of potential suffering. If you get it, you worry about losing it. If you don't get it, you feel inadequate. The path to inner freedom involves a conscious choice to want less. This isn't about asceticism or depriving yourself of pleasure. It's about discerning what truly adds value to your life and letting go of the rest. It's about finding richness in experience, not in possessions. When you are no longer chasing external validation, you become incredibly free. You find joy in a walk in nature, a deep conversation with a friend, the satisfaction of creating something with your own hands. This journey also requires cultivating compassion, both for others and for yourself. When you understand that everyone is fighting their own inner battles, it becomes much easier to forgive their shortcomings. You see their anger or their arrogance not as a personal attack, but as a manifestation of their own suffering. This perspective dissolves resentment and replaces it with empathy. And you must extend this same compassion to yourself. You will stumble on this path. You will get lost in old patterns. That's okay. The goal isn't perfection, it's progress. Treat yourself with the same kindness and understanding you would offer a dear friend. Think of it like this. The person driven by external goals is like a ship at the mercy of the wind and waves. Their happiness depends entirely on favorable conditions. If the seas are calm and the wind is in their favor, they are happy. But when a storm comes, they are tossed about, helpless. The person cultivating inner freedom is like a submarine. They can navigate the surface when it's pleasant, But when the storm rages, they can dive deep beneath the waves into a realm of profound stillness and calm. The storm is still happening on the surface, but it no longer affects their inner state. They are in control, navigating from a place of deep stability. This is the highest level. It's not about being emotionless. It's about feeling your emotions fully without being controlled by them. It's not about avoiding challenges. It's about meeting them with grace and resilience. It's a state of being where your happiness is not dependent on anyone or anything outside of yourself. It is a radical act of self-reliance, a declaration of independence for your own soul. This is the ultimate power, the ultimate wealth, and the ultimate knowledge. It is the art of living well, and it is available to every single one of us, right here, right now. The journey starts with a single conscious breath. It continues with the choice to observe rather than react. And it blossoms into a life of profound peace, purpose, and freedom. So, the next time you think about success, I invite you to look beyond the glittering prizes of the world. Look inward. The highest level you can ever reach is the mastery of your own inner world. Thank you for watching. If this resonated with you, consider subscribing for more journeys into the art of living.